Hey guys, it's Christmas Day here in Thailand. They don't celebrate Christmas, so it's like any other day really. In this video I want to do some shout outs for some informational resources, some people that I've watched on YouTube over the years that have helped me a great deal in learning how to do this stuff. And I'm going to go over daily operations, things that I do every day. Cover a few of the points on updates as how the system's doing, good and bad, and talk a little bit about we'll call it marketing and sales. Yeah. Okay, shoutouts. I'm going to divide these YouTube contributors by hydroponic and aquaponic categories. Hydroponics, Mr. Brock Hughes in Canada. Wealth of information, really great guy. I emailed Brock yesterday or this morning, and he got back to me. I had a question about something, and Christmas Eve, Brock time, and he's responding to my email. Very generous with the information. I'll put all the links to these guys in the description box so you can click on them and go check out their channels. Everybody here that I'm going to mention has a channel except for one resource. We'll get to that later. Again, Hydroponics, MHP Gardener, most of you all know who he is, and Austin Family Gardening. Another great source of information, and he is always doing lots of experimentation with different things, different formats of growing. In the aquaponic category, I have RobBob. RobBob's been putting up videos for years. He's does all kinds of gardening, aquaponics included, and his systems are always awesome. Massive amounts of production. I'm pretty sure that guy hasn't purchased a vegetable in 5 years. I don't know that. Maybe Rob will let us know how much food he actually gets out of his systems. Dr. Nate Storey, Bright Agro Tech, most of you know who he is, I'm sure. If you don't, go watch his videos. My favorite series is the ones on nutrient supplementation, because he can give us things scientifically that we otherwise wouldn't be able to figure out ourselves. His chemistry is flawless, and therefore he can break it down by weight and water volume exactly what you need to supplement or should be supplementing. And that's very helpful. The other aquaponic resource that I want to mention is the Backyard Aquaponics forums. I learn voluminous amounts of information from those forums. I'm not a big contributor to those forums. I'm trying to choose my words carefully here, but I'm just going to lay it out for you. The community, the aquaponics community, is tumultuous. That's the word I'm going to use. Tumultuous. You just have your 10% of assholes that ruin it for everybody, and the other 80% or 90% are contributing and learning together. And regardless of all of that, Backyard Aquaponics Forum is an outstanding resource of information. There have been people who have been contributing for years, experimenting with different things, and there are many people on there that run successful home-based or even commercial or larger systems. So go check that out. I want to mention a few channels on YouTube which I feel are underrated and should have more views. We'll call them up-and-comers, if you will, or just worth checking out. Key Player 91. Keith is from Georgia in the United States. And Keith, his stuff always looks good. He just does a good job. Jim Connor in the UK. Jim is, I'm going to call you a nerd, Jim, but Jim is smarter than most of us will ever be, and he does lots of cool things electronically and that he incorporates into his hydroponic systems, and he does an excellent job over there in his little greenhouse as well. Citizen Peng is in Australia. Citizen Peng is fun to watch because he does everything himself. The man builds greenhouses and all kinds of stuff on a pretty decent sized scale, and he does all the work himself. and you can see that in his videos because he'll time lapse it for you, and it's pretty cool. Totterdale 91, again in Australia. Brendan and I have traded seeds a couple times, and Brendan's a good dude, and his tomato yields are always awesome. Definitely worth checking out for the hydroponic stuff. I should mention Citizen Peng is Aquaponic, Jim Connor's hydroponic, Key Player is hydroponic, and Totterdale 91 is hydroponic. Citizen Peng is aquaponic. Alright, I want to tell you a little bit about the daily operations of what I do. Every day when I show up, what do I do? And I want to talk about the good and bad of what's going on with the system right now. Mostly everything is good. I have one problem, and that is my tomatoes are cracking, and I think and you guys can make some suggestions, but I'm running a constant flow with drippers. I have to use drippers, I have to use emitters. I hate doing it, but I don't have a choice because I'm running too many buckets. So after about 50 buckets, I lose pressure, and the remaining buckets on the line don't get any water. So I have to use emitters. I go through twice a day and check the emitters. A lot of times they're clogged. I have to take them off, clean them out. I hate them. I don't like them, but they're a necessary evil in this instance. I'm running constant flow. I'm not doing timed waterings. So I think what needed to be done, and what I've done to address the cracking on the tomatoes from this point, and it wasn't just the heirlooms, it wasn't just the Brandywine, the big beef were also cracking, and they're cracking pretty aggressively when they're green even. So what I've done is backed off on the nutrients, and Brock helped me out with that as well. So I'm going to go with Brock's suggestion as the first attempt. We'll back off on the nutrients, see if that helps, and if it does, great. If it doesn't, then we'll look at other methods of perhaps timed waterings or something to that effect. Other than that, everything is good. The fish are eating a little bit less than I'd like them to, but that's because the water temperature has dropped. We have our own version of winter here. Everything cools off, and the water doesn't get any sunlight. So the fish water is about 22 degrees Celsius, and if I go below 20 degrees Celsius, the barramundi are probably going to stop eating entirely. I won't let that happen. I'll start running water through about 300 meters of poly tubing and heating it during the daytime the best I can, and worst case scenario, I'll go out and buy water heaters. I don't think it's a concern just yet. So they're not growing and they're not eating as fast as I'd like them to, but that's to be expected with the water temperature. Other than that, everything is, I can't complain, guys. Everything's growing well, and overall, you know, things remain positive. So what do I do when I show up here? The first thing I do as soon as I pull up is grab my bag, grab my meter, and run over and check my hydroponic EC. I don't have a doser. I manually adjust nutrients, and I don't have a reservoir tank. But the reason I don't have a freshwater reservoir to top up the tank is because I'm running 1,200 liters, and 1,200 liters should stay throughout the nighttime relatively constant. So I run over there in the morning and adjust EC if needed, or just leave it alone if it's where it should be. I will then feed the fish, wait a while, clean the filters. I will go back to the hydro and adjust nutrients, and adjust nutrients on the aquaponic, the aquaponic plant feed water. And then I'll start looking at the plants. I'll check for bugs, make sure all my water lines are unclogged, everything is getting water, do a general, vegetation check, make sure everything is doing what it's supposed to do. Look for caterpillars, look for insects, and I'll harvest whatever's ready to harvest. I'll fill orders if I have any, and then start whatever seeds that I need to start, if that needs to happen that day. Right now, I'm trying to get everything on a nice weekly schedule, especially in terms of the lettuce, so we have X amount of heads theoretically prepared and ready to go every week, and coming out of the system with X amount of heads going back into the system. The basil is a little bit more forgiving time-wise, and so that's kind of where we're at. The tomatoes, they're all in progress, and I've got more coming, and they'll be placed in, and once the cherry tomatoes hit their peak height. Once they hit the roof, I'll top them and begin cloning growing tips from the cherries, so everything isn't growing completely simultaneously. I do have a lot of other stuff in progress: zucchini, cantaloupe, eggplants, things like that, to supplement what primarily we're growing. Lettuce and tomatoes right now, and basil. I'll talk a little bit about I guess I'm going to call it marketing and sales. It's really not marketing, sales. It's just a few points I want to touch on from a business perspective. The first single-handedly most important point that I can make is that you have to prepare yourself psychologically, emotionally, and financially for the unexpected. I'll give you a really good example. For whatever reason, right before I started making this video, I wanted to find my container of micronutrients. So I went to look for it, and then I identified the container that the micronutrients had been in, and they're all gone. So they weren't stolen, but what had happened was I had some folks come out to clean up the area, to pick up trash. We pressure washed the concrete and just did a general cleaning. And we removed a lot of trash from the site as well, old building materials. Somehow, in somebody's mind, I'm assuming that my micronutrient boxes were identified as garbage. And I don't know how, because they were all nearly full. They're 1 kilogram, minimum of 500 gram boxes. They were all nearly full because I just started using them. And I had enough of these micronutrients to last me probably several years, just because I bought them in bulk. So $500 worth of micronutrients are gone, and no one's going to take that hit but me. Obviously, no one's going to accept any responsibility for that. I was here at the time. I was on site, so I was working alongside them. So I don't know exactly what happened, but they're gone. Shit, you know, it sucks, right? It sucks. It's a hard hit to swallow, because I don't want to go through the hassle of having to order them again. Irregardless of the money, that sucks too, but they're gone. So come what may, just prepare yourselves for shit to happen. And it was, you know, it shouldn't have happened. It should have been easily avoidable, but it did happen. So there you go. All right, so I just want to present a little bit about my mindset and where I'm at with my short-term goals right now. Obviously, I need to cover my overhead. That is my first goal. I can tell you right now, my overhead, this is my monthly reoccurring costs to keep this place operational, is about $300 a month. And 70% of that cost is electricity. 70% of the cost is electricity. The other 30% is fish food, hydroponic nutrients, and I guess we'll call it miscellaneous, really. Now that, I want to make an important point here. There are many things which I stocked. Sponges, the cups, the hydroponic cups and sponges, the hydroponic nutrients is a good example. I stocked up on all that stuff, so that monthly expense is excluding some of those things, some of the larger big ticket items. My pricing on my produce is very competitive. It's basically the same thing that you're going to pay in the store. The reason behind that is I don't have the clientele, the reputation, or anything to justify charging anybody more than they'd pay somewhere else. Is my product better? Maybe. It's fresher, we know that. Freshness is the main point, and chemical free. Now, chemical free here means something very different than chemical free or organic by Western standards. I'm not going to get into that. And again, I don't market my stuff as being chemi-free, organic, hydroponic, aquaponic. I don't market it as any of that. It's a fresher, better product. That's what I basically would tell somebody. Or I don't really tell people anything. If I want to try to make a sale, I give them a sample of my product, and I tell them that you can expect no less than this level of quality. Crop selection. Okay, fruit here in the tropics, there's lots of it. There's lots of fruit, but that doesn't mean it's good fruit. Melons are a really good example. Melons and tomatoes are both a good example. The tomatoes are shit. Hands down, they're garbage. They don't branch out from anything than what's tropically indigenous. It's rubbish. It's garbage. The melons, once in a while you'll get a good melon, but most of the time you'll get a very average to subpar melon, and I'm going to tell you why I believe that is the case. Everything is based on a wholesale production and sales level. So the farmer that's growing a crop full of melons isn't going to spend the time, the effort, or the money to provide adequate nutrients and potassium levels and all of those things that are important to get the sugar levels in the melon up to where they need to be to taste good, because it doesn't matter how good that melon tastes, he's going to get the same shitty amount of money per kilo for his crop that he would get whether they taste good or they taste okay. And that is no different than anywhere else in the world, in the sense that wholesale is wholesale, and the wholesaler is only going to pay what he wants to pay. Okay? And tomatoes would be the same thing. Why would a farmer risk his entire livelihood to grow a new strain or a better tasting tomato when the wholesaler isn't providing a market for it? And if that's his revenue stream and that's his approach to sales, then he is very limited in his options. So that being said, we want to try to be somewhat unique with our crop production, but we don't really have to be that unique. All we have to do is create something that's more fresh, that tastes better, and that isn't readily available. I'm not going to use the word niche market. I hate that word. It's like the most amateur business term that exists because it's so fucking stupid. Niche market means nothing more than supplying something that's in demand, and that applies to all business across the board. If I want to sell you this cigarette lighter and you already have a cigarette lighter, then you don't want to buy mine, right? So it's just dumb. Be realistic about your expectations. Me too. I'm being trying to be realistic about my expectations. Currently, every single thing that has come ripe and come off my growing room has been sold. Nothing has gone to compost, nothing has gone to waste, unless it had unacceptable blemishes. That's a good thing, right? Sure it is. My stuff is priced very competitively, and immediately the quality and the flavor was recognized even by the locals, and therefore there is currently a demand higher than I can supply. My stuff is sold every single day. Now, what did I tell you? It was about $300 a month is what it costs to keep this place going. I don't have any labor. I don't pay anyone to do anything. I do everything myself. So I would say, especially if you're in the first world, labor expenses will destroy you very, very quickly. Very quickly. Because labor is expensive. Here it's not expensive, but even if I were to hire someone, it would eat me up so fast, and I would be right back to sitting on my ass doing nothing. It just doesn't make sense right now. So I feel like a lot of commercial systems, we always see that they've got 4, 5, 6 people on staff, or even 2 or 3. You have to sell a whole lot more produce and fish to be able to sustain that. Like, that shit's expensive. So just think about that. If you want to do a large system, it's a lot of work. And right now, I can honestly tell you, I'm not working that hard, guys. I'll show up in the mornings, feed the fish, do the stuff that I walked you through earlier, and a lot of times that stuff is done in a couple hours. And I can go drink coffee and get on Facebook or the internet and dick around and do whatever. So now that the build is done and everything's sort of in motion, it's a waiting game. I'm just waiting for stuff to become ripe so I can present it to larger potential clients. So the goal short term is to get the vegetative stuff, the produce, and start moving enough of it and producing enough of it to cover the overhead. Once I've covered the overhead, I'm doing what I love in a hobby-sized system, or small. Commercial's a finicky word, guys, because this is tiny. This is tiny compared to massive commercial systems. But it's a little bit bigger than a backyard hobby system, right? So we'll call it sort of a hobby farm. The point is, once the revenue is covered with plants, that's awesome, because you have to remember I still have 2 tons of fish sitting behind me, and protein here is much more expensive than vegetables. So winner chicken dinner, the fish are going to make money if I'm covering my overhead with the plants. And I'm not saying that I can only sell plants to cover overhead. There's plenty of room for profits there as well. What I'm insinuating is it'll take one restaurant-sized customer, okay, to cover my overhead. One restaurant-sized customer will cover my monthly overhead, and from after that, everything is profit. I think that about wraps it up, guys. I just wanted to run those few things by you. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Enjoy your holidays and your families and all of that good stuff. Next year, there's a lot of big things coming for me personally. It'll be a big year, because by the end of the year, if I'm not comfortable with how things are looking, I guess I'll probably go get a real job, maybe, because I think I'll be bored by that time. And I've never not made stupid good money, and I don't like not making good money. So I have to think about that. But that's a long ways off. We have all next year, maybe even into 2016. I have no concerns whatsoever this will be profitable. The way things are standing now, I am not remotely concerned. I'm not going to get rich selling veggies, guys. It's not going to happen. And you probably won't either. But if you love doing it and you can make ends meet, well, that's half the battle right there.